There's 1,000 different type of decks going on right now in Yugioh Duel Links. A lot of fun going on. Synchro decks, burner decks, ritual decks, meta decks, meme decks. How do you know which one's best for you? We're gonna talk about that. Let's go! Alright guys, so Yu-Gi-Oh right now could be a bit overwhelming. It's a fun game, it's a very competitive game, it's a very fast-pacing, refreshing game. So, how do you choose the best deck for you? I'm checking a lot of groups, I'm seeing a lot of forum community questions about how do I choose what's best for me? What do I choose as my first deck? Tell me what to do. Well, I'm not going to tell you which deck you're supposed to choose. I'm going to show you what's the best option for you. And I'm going to show you what questions you should be asking yourself when you're going to choose your first deck. And I brought it basically down to 3 different questions. First, what type of deck player are you going to be? Number 2, how much time, how much of your resources are you going to give the game? Are you going to be a free-to-play player? Are you going to be a competitive whale? Be honest with you. Are you going to play it for fun? Or are you going to play it for competition? And number 3, exactly, how much fun, how much time are you going to set to your deck? First question, what type of player are you going to be? What type of deck? See, there's different type of players that are in Yu-Gi-Oh! There's the classic beatdown type, which is basically attack, attack, and attack. There's the strategist, basically it comes down to the Kaiba type deck, which is the Yami-Yugi type deck, but there's also the burner type deck, a deck that's basically a patient deck that basically poison versus your competitor. We also got the counter attack, the meme decks. We're gonna break them all down to you bit by bit. So let's start off with the beatdown deck. A beatdown deck is usually a deck that focuses solely on high attack and coming right down to your opponent. You're always in your opponent's face. You're coming down at them. Very popular beatdown decks are of course the Blue Eyes decks. The Luna Light monster decks are also beatdowns. There's quite a few. Invoke decks, depending on how you see them, can be considered beatdown as well. Basically, it's decks that focus on attack. There's not much thinking, not much strategy based on them. One of the most famous ones at the moment are the super heavy samurais. They're basically decks that focus on one and one thing only: lethal attack, breaking it down. Now granted, nowadays Yu-Gi is very diverse as a game. So that means that you don't have just one single type. If you break down, you're 100% breakdown. You can have your combinations. But the second type of deck you can have is the control deck. A control deck is a deck that doesn't really have much attack compared to a beatdown deck, but it's basically more of a deck of stopping your opponent, stopping the gameplay, stopping their strategies. They put all these resources, all these clicks on bringing down this huge attack monster, and you do something with your monsters to stop that from happening. Let it be put him in defense mode, let it be destroying the monster, let it be weakening the attack of the monster. It's basically a control deck because it's focused on controlling the outcome of what's going down. Very popular control deck at the moment is the Elemental Saber type deck. That's a control type deck. Another type of control type deck, which could usually be combined with the burner type decks, are for example the Aroma decks. Aroma decks are basically not really much on attack monsters, but basically stalling and stopping your opponent from doing whatever they want to do. Okay, moving along. We also got the Tech deck. Now the Tech deck, I'm going to show you guys all these decks from different sources of web pages. I just want to mention them real quick and just give you some insight on how you can get those done. Yubel is an amazing example. Where was I? Okay, the Tech decks. Yubel is a great example of a Tech deck. A Tech deck is usually a deck that requires a lot of strategy, a lot of build-up, a lot of setup for you to come down at your opponent. Usually the Tech decks, when they come down, when they create the strategies, it's really hard to get out of that strategy. But it's basically you putting all your resources into one strategic move. They usually pay off very well, but it's usually a brainer deck. It's a deck that you bring a lot of resources in and you gotta really think about a long-term strategy. It's not just bring down a monster, attack, get your monster destroyed, bring down another monster, revive. No, it's a deck that you gotta really sit down and build and think thoroughly what you're gonna do. Usually tech decks as well depend a lot on a character skill. Now what's a character skill you're asking about? A character skill is one of the things that we have in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links, different from the trading card game, which is usually the classic people in front of people gameplay, is that you have skills. All the characters, which are all based on the anime at the moment, have a different skill. Let it be life point increase, let it be that it can increase a monster's attack, that you can affect or mess with the person's graveyard. There's a whole bunch of skills that you have currently in Duel Links that you can use with your deck or to change the odds. Usually very tech decks require heavily on the character skill and are usually locked down. For example, there is a character in the GX series that uses monsters called Cyber Dragons, Cyber Darks. Now, the Cyber Dragons are a very classic one-trick pony beatdown deck. They've gotten a whole lot of more support, but gives them a little bit more of support at the moment. They're a bit more diverse, but in core, it's a deck, not much defense, in your face, bring down at you, attack with a Frank God, one turn kill. They have a skill called Cyber Style. Now, Cyber Style is a skill that is very dependent heavily on your situation and the strategy you're going to use with that particular character. If you take that same deck and you use it with a different character, chances are you're not going to get the same gameplay with that other character. Now the meme decks. Meme decks are decks that are actually a whole lot of fun to see play. Not that much of a deck for you to win or compete, but for you to have fun, which is number 3 most important thing you gotta do, or number 1 depending on how you see it. You gotta have fun with your deck. Meme decks are usually decks that either build of very funny critters, very funny characters, or just work in such a strange way that are basically just a deck for you to make fun of. Meme decks could also be monsters that are based on the anime. For example, Joey Wheeler. Joey Wheeler, if you know the anime, is a very common meme deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Duel Links. Usually when you see somebody playing with Joey, especially first generation Joey, they're usually playing some type of deck that may be some of the monsters from the anime, and it's just basically just a spout of comic relief more than actual serious gameplay. Don't underestimate a meme deck, because you can find some serious players with meme deck. Okay, so now let's break it down to one of the biggest questions and one of the biggest mistakes that I made when I was a rookie. Yu-Gi has changed a lot. I used to play a lot the classic trading card game. So where do you find all this that's going on now? Where do you find the resources? Since Yu-Gi-Oh! Is a very changing game, and it's a game that's always updating, there's always something new in your face. Some of the places you can go are Duel Links Meta. I'm going to switch a bit now. Or you can go to web pages like duellinks.gamecut.co. Or you can also check out Reddit, which is always a great source for information. Now, why is this page considered for many the #1 web page for you to go and get information on Yu-Gi-Oh? Because it's very, very complete. You get information like tier list. A tier list, is basically when you find out what category, what ranking a current deck has. Now, there's a pitfall here. You shouldn't just follow whatever is on tier at the moment, because you can have tier 1, which is the best, or tier 0, when it's unknown, it's confusing everyone and winning a lot of battles, and then 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, the deck is no longer that type of tier anymore. It can easily drop to tier 3 or just get out of the tier entirely, and then there's the next big thing going on. So this is why it's very important to understand that it's basically how much time you want to focus on your deck, how much resources do you want to focus on a deck, and how much fun you're going to have. Sometimes you have a whole lot of fun with your deck and you're not always winning, or you have a lot of fun and you can play the game and enjoy the game for what it is. Instead of just chasing whatever deck is amazing at the moment, you're not happy with, you don't feel good with. In my personal example, a deck that I like to call a counterattack stalling deck, which is Gravekeepers. It's a very cool deck. It was currently meta for a while, which is a common word you use in competitions. And I basically got it, and I wasted a lot of my resources grinding and being free to play to get gems to be able to pull packs. And when I had the deck, I didn't really have much fun with that deck, to be honest. I was always trying to mix it up or going back to my classics. I'm more of a beatdown player myself, machine beatdown, so I'm always inclined to those type of decks. For example, Going back to beatdowns, this is a very classic example of a beatdown deck. Super heavy samurais. Here you can see information on the monsters, what they do, what their effects are, and basically how they work as a whole. Because one of the most important things you gotta take in mind is how does this deck work in conjunction and combination together. Usually decks that are beat down don't tend to have a lot of defense, so you gotta give it back row support. There's your main row, the monsters, and then there's back rows, spells and traps you can use for defense, for protections, or for your strategies. This type of deck is very interesting because it works best when you don't have any cards in the back whatsoever. Most of the effect monsters of these monsters work only if you don't have any spell or traps in your deck. That's basically beatdown at its best. You can always get a breakdown and more information here on these monsters, and cards that are currently in the game, or cards that are currently in the trading card game, but they could be in the game in the future. There's a very interesting type of monster called ritual monsters. Basically, monsters could be at the moment either classic, bring down on the field monsters like Blue Eyes. There's basically a monster from your main deck to your field. But there's a lot of diversity currently in Duel Links going on. So again, just because a deck is at its core beatdown, control, doesn't mean you don't have any other pinches here of that, pinches here of the other. For example, main current type of combination monsters are either ritual monsters, fusion monsters, synchro monsters. There's also a very special category right now called fusion union, like to call it, like Gladiator Beast. They are fusion monsters that you don't need the fusion spell to be able to get it. Ritual monsters and fusion monsters usually require either a ritual spell or a fusion spell to be able to combine and come down to the field. They work at a separate deck. Now these type of decks can be a whole lot of fun to play, but they're basically a tech deck. They're strategy based decks. It's you prepping a strategy, and if that doesn't work, then you need to find out a way to bring them back. Ritual monsters require monsters in your hand to sacrifice for you to take them down on the field. A very popular ritual monster, maybe a staple, is the Cyber Angel. Now Cyber Angels are very special to me, and I was trying to give them love for a long time. They're fun to play, and most of the resources to get these monsters you can get for free in the game. You don't really have to spend money to be able to get these. Now another example I was going to talk about was the burner type decks. This, for example, Stromberg, is a type of burner type deck. Now what's a burner type deck? Or a burn deck or a stall deck? It's a deck that's basically made to not only control your opponent, but basically poison your opponent, destroy your opponent bit by bit, turn by turn. It's not really an aggressive, attack you directly type deck. It's more of a counter attack deck that makes you wait for an opponent to do something for you to either stop it or make him pay for it. What do you mean by make him pay for it? That you affect them, you take out life points. This is a very common and very staple type of burner type control deck, because it's a deck that damages your opponent depending on what they do. All these monsters are basically made to affect your opponent. This is a very, very commonly seen monster when it comes to when you're using a burner type deck. If you're that type of player that wants a strategy that likes to see your opponent bit by bit destroy themselves. So if you're a troll, if you're the type of person that you just love making your friends get pissed off or your opponent angry, this is the type of deck for you. Alright, now something else that you can see in Duel Links meta are the top decks at the moment, and you can see all sorts of monster types. So if you're interested in the type that you saw playing around, you can come here and you can see some builds, or you can just go on YouTube and you can see some videos or inside the game. We'll talk about that in a moment. Something else you gotta take in mind is that there's decks, there's EX decks, there's starter decks, there's boxes, main boxes, and as well, there are mini boxes. So what does this all mean? Well, basically, there's many ways you can start out in the game. Well, there's gems. Gems you can get by leveling up your characters, by logging in daily, by meeting missions, by playing in the competition tournaments, or just as free gifts. There's a whole lot of boxes right now at the moment. I mean, Currently there's 26 boxes. I mean, damn, 26 boxes. How do you know what to get? Especially when, for example, a standard main box can have easily around 190, 200 packs. One pack is 50 gems, you get 200 of these. How do you know which one to get? Take in mind how the cards come. There are normal cards, there's rare cards, there's super rare, and there's ultra rares. Ultra rares are usually the best cards in the pack. Many of the first 8, as you can see, the first 8 boxes are kind of obsolete, are kind of old. You could technically say the same around the first 8 and the first 10 after that as well, the first 18. Where at the moment, compared with the rest that's going on right now, they're either harder to get monsters or monsters that are not really competitive at the moment or really that much fun to play with. But the reason why they're still rocking is because many of the first 8 overall boxes have some of the most important support cards or must-have core cards in a deck. For example, you like to play a lot of Ritual? Sonic Bird is a very good option. Kuriboh, Spear Kuriboh, is one of the best defenses you could have at the moment for any deck that's either beat down or slow or just a one-trick pony. There are several cards here like Magical Hats that are stable that you can't get in current decks. So it's always good to watch out for promotions on what you can get from these decks. There's a main box that has, as I said, 200 easily packs and usually have several core staple monsters in one single set. For example, this box, Valhalla Calling, has a lot of fairy type support, Master Hyperion, but it also has a lot of support for example, Fortune Ladies. Fortune Ladies are a type of deck that is a tech deck, but there's also these mini boxes. Now, what's a mini box? Mini boxes usually only have 100 packs, and they're usually much more limited. It's basically on a diet, a main box on a diet. Usually brings one set of monster deck and some support or special cards for the rest. For example, this one brings the Revendread. Revendread is a ritual type monster as well that's very popular and currently could be used a bit more than Cyber Angels, or they can work in conjunction. Another very popular at the moment mini deck is the following. The Shinra Nui. The Shinra Nui, as I mentioned, are very interesting because you don't need much resources to build this deck. It's very competitive, it's fun to play, it's starting getting a limitation, but still at the moment it's very fun to play. It has a very good support card called Majeki Break, which is very common in decks at the moment. So basically, before you jump in and buy whatever's meta or spend your resources, check how the internet is going on. See some video plays of it. You can see video plays here in the game as well, and I'll show you how in a second. And if you like it, you like what you see, you like how you feel it, then you can go ahead and invest your time and resources for it. Now, something else you gotta take in mind is that there's specials going on. Specials usually bring a lot of the support cards that are very common and no matter what deck you're gonna have. For example, the back row, the Spell and Trap Destroyer, Cosmic Cyclone, or the Mirror Wall. Mirror Wall brings down the attack of an attacking monster, or as I was mentioning, Spear Kuriboh. Usually these come in a way that you pay a couple of dollars, you get support cards, and you get some tools from whatever's the latest box that's going on at the moment. There's also starter decks. Starter decks are basically decks that come pre-built already. They're not that expensive, they usually cost a couple of bucks. Now, the trick is, you usually have to buy 3 of them, so you can get all 3 sets of the card. The way Yugioh Duel Links works is that usually a set of card needs to be in the deck 3 times for it to be the best, to be optimal. Usually the ultra rare cards. Very popular, very usually purchased one, very recommended one would be, for example, Kaiba's. Kaiba's EX White Dragon of Legend is very interesting because it brings a lot of support for the Blue Eyes. Blue Eyes, White Dragon, Dark Magician. If you don't know the anime, are the 2 most popular monsters at the moment in Yu-Gi-Oh! They usually get support no matter what. They're usually good decks no matter what. So basically you can get this one for Kaiba, or you can get the one that's coming out for Yugi, Master of Chaos, etc. a very interesting guy here called the Trader. And with the Trader, every 8 hours you get cards that you can usually get for free in the game, just by collecting items. They're usually a lot of support. For example, this card is very common in decks at the moment. It's so good it was limited, where it's basically a 2 attack protection. Direct attack and then 1 more attack. You get support for a whole lot of little monsters, support for decks. It's very interesting to come in every couple of hours. And here's a tip for you guys that took me weeks for me to understand. He's got 2 inventories. He's got the feature inventory, and he's got the regular inventory that opens up every 8 hours. So every 8 hours you can get 1 card from the card trader. And then you have to come back again in 8 hours. And it's usually some of the most standard cards in the game. For example, if you understand and you want to play fusion monsters, Polymerization is the staple fusion card for you to get. AD Changer is a very common card to use with the Red Eyes decks. Red Eyes is usually a very interesting combination of a beatdown Union deck. Union because it uses other monsters to protect and stop the other opponent's player. A very popular and very irritating Mimic deck is Cyberstein. It's usually a deck where you heal a lot of energy and you pay 5,000 life points. This game has 4,000 life points, so you gotta get more life points to then special summon 1 fusion monster from your deck. There's a lot of cards here that you can check. Very stable, very common. This guy's very common as well. No monster over 1900 can attack it, so it's a beatdown deck's nightmare. It's usually very common in burner install decks, because if you got this monster down and they got 4,000 attack monsters, they can't attack you, they can't hurt you. But there's 2 different card traders. There's a standard card trader and there's the event card trader. The event or the EX card trader usually has 2 promotions going at the same time. It's usually based on whatever gems or points you get for the current event that may be happening in the game. And you can get cards that are usually just for that event. They're not common like in the regular card trader. So check them out both. It's a great way for you to get some cards. Alright, so I kept on saying, how do you see? You get all this information about these decks, but I kept on saying that you can see it in the game. Here's how you can see it in the actual game. There's a place here called the street replay. Now in street replays, you can see players fighting each other off with different decks, and you can just watch as a spectator. Now if you watch as a spectator, you might see gameplay, you might see a deck that you like, that you can more or less set up. So here we're going to see Luna playing against Arcana. Arcana is usually a player that likes to use Dark Magician monsters, or who knows, but you can find anyone playing anything nowadays in Newbie. Oh, there you go. He's playing Dark Magician. There you go. Beatdown, Muscle. Beatdown is usually Kaiba's deck. As a matter of fact, it's so Kaiba that there's a skill in Kaiba called Beatdown. I like that deck. I want to see it. I may play it myself. You see a deck you like, you can do the following. Before you hit end, you can just come here, you can click on that deck and you can see the deck. So this seems to be a deck I can play. Ah, I don't have him. And he is part of Selection Box, or Valiant Soul. You see, that's a monster that I would need. But basically, what do? You basically combine it how you can play it. You can copy the deck. Let's go to Luna directly. These are basically all the characters you can unlock in Yugioh at the moment. Let's do the same thing he's doing with Luna. You can always see where the card is coming from, you can check skill list, and you can also see a card catalog. For example, you want to find a monster that you saw and you just saw the name and don't know where it's coming from, you can usually put it here. For example, if you put Blue Eyes, you can see everything that has to go with Blue Eyes and where you can get it. Let it be a card you have or not, for example. For example, this lady became very popular. I got 2 of her. How do you get her? In Judgment Force, etc, etc. So guys, basically that's a very improvised breakdown on just getting the steps for Yugi. Sorry it was a bit too long. It basically comes down to the following. What type of player do you want to be? How much time, resources, money do you want to spend on the game? Do you have fun? Do you not have fun with your deck? You don't have fun? Try something else. Don't just chase whatever is meta. Just work hard on whatever you want. Trust me from experience, I spend a lot of resources, a lot of gems, a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of frustration. Trying to get a deck because I saw a guy using it on YouTube or on Twitch and he was amazing at it, he kicked ass, and then when I played it, it sucked, or by the time I got it, it was already nerfed, it was already banned. Try to get what's best for you. Check out mini boxes. Current mini boxes, let it be whatever's fresh, whatever's in the last couple of months, are very good, very cheap, and a whole lot of fun. This was Luis, I hope you liked it, also known as the Mainer. Please like, please subscribe, I really appreciate it. And donations, tips, God, I need donations. Alright, have a nice night, be safe.